he's really truly not just a mean guy. At what point specifically does he finally look at Persephone? This is definitely, I would say, my favorite thing I've ever done. Maybe it's okay to slowly lower those walls and meet each other, and you watch them fall in love in almost real time.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Heart Emotion Podcast. I'm so excited to welcome Jake Stormoen to the podcast today. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
So excited to talk to you. I last weekend watched Seeking Persephone over on Amazon, and it's kind of funny how it went down. For those of you that don't know a lot about the project, you can watch it right now on Amazon, and Amazon breaks it up into 4 parts for you. And so I decided to purchase the first part. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And I love a good period drama. And so, plus, when I watch late at night, I tend to fall asleep. So I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And
Fair.
so, I hit the pay button, paid for the first one. At the end of number one, I was like, I think I really like this. And so I hit the pay button and I bought the second one. And then by the end of number two, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. And I just paid for the rest of it and called it good. So I'm just going to let everybody know up front, just pay for the whole thing. You're going to love it. So I
Well,
wanted
thank
to
you.
just take some time and talk to you and get to know a little bit of the backstory of this movie and kind of get the word out there because it was just a fantastic movie to see. So thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving us a chance, and then continuing to give us a chance and enjoying it in the end.
I should have just went with my gut from the beginning. So
That's all right. That's the beauty of having it broken into a mini series is you can dip your toe in with an episode or two.
you
So it's
can.
good.
So, Jake, for anyone who may just come across this project and wants to know a little bit about like your backstory and how you got to this place with this project, catch us up a little bit on some of your past projects.
Oh, I don't. How much time do you have? It's a long road and a long story. It's funny. I've been doing this full time for over 10 years, probably 13, 14 years now, I would guess.
Yeah.
If I did the math, it would probably scare me, but we'll say right around there. But it's just been one of those things where I've been very fortunate to do this full time. And yet I don't think I'm in any danger of being recognized on the street or anything like that. So it's that weird kind of middle ground um, of being a freelance artist and somehow making this work. And I would say probably the biggest thing that contributed to that so far is I was on a little tiny CW show for 4 years called The Outpost. And so that definitely helped things for sure. But it's been a long journey, and it started with a whole lot of very independent films, and this industry is in such a weird place right now that it's largely gone back to that for me. But I'm fortunate in that it's with people that I've now worked with for 10 years, and I'm kind of on the other side of it as well, in that I'm helping produce these things and occasionally directing, and so I've tried to kind of climb that personal ladder as much as I can over the years. And this was definitely a culmination of that. Seeking Persephone was the director of that. I've worked with again almost that whole time, well over 10 years now, on and off. And he's become a very good friend. And through him, I met the author of the novel, which this I guess now miniseries is based off of a best-selling novel of the same name, Seeking Persephone by Sarah M. Eden. And she wrote the screenplay and was on set with us every day as a producer as well. So it was kind of, we laugh because John had wanted to get one of these books adapted, he says, for 13 years. Um, and I certainly would not have been a good pick for it back then. I was very new and I was younger, and now I'm, pushing 40 now, and it just fit a little bit better. But it was a culmination of all those things. And here we are. We took a very independent approach. When we were getting this off the ground, the strikes were going on, COVID, we were just kind of out of COVID. AI is on the rise. It's still on the rise, and now it's just a part of everyday life. And it's a very weird time in the world and the industry, especially. So this was really a labor of love from what ended up people who being from people who had decades of experience, and myself included now, thankfully. Um, but we had a crew of 10, 12 people, a cast of just a couple main actors, and we shot it. We did a couple interior set builds in Utah, and then the rest was shot on location in Northern England. So it's been a long time coming, and I've been working on this for about 3 years now.
Yeah.
So it's that was a very long-winded answer, and now I'm wondering if I even answered your question. But it's been a lot of weird things that have just fallen into place, some better, some for worse, but ultimately brought us to this moment that now I'm very proud of and I'm thrilled about.
You totally answered the question.
Oh, good, good,
So,
good, good.
you knew the director. How then, what was that conversation like when, somebody sat down, when he sat down and said, "Hey, let's see if we can do this." Like, how did you initially then get involved in the project?
Yeah, so John approached me. I had on this show that I was on called The Outpost on the CW. I played a main character on that, and I directed in its final season as well. So I had directed television. I had not directed a feature film, and I got the chance to do that in 2023, 2022, 2023. 2020 has been a very long year. I don't know
Yeah.
if you know. So
Yes.
it's all a blur to me. But John was the post supervisor on that, and so he helped edit it and bring it together. And I was in the room with him every day. And as we were finishing on that, we were talking about what's next. And he said, "Do you remember years prior he had mentioned the second book in the Lancaster series called Courting Miss Lancaster?" And he had initially tried to adapt that, and it didn't go anywhere. And he said, "Do you remember that?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, I want to pick that back up, but I want to start at the beginning, which is the first book called Seeking Persephone. And I know the author now. And I think you'd be great as the male lead, as Adam Boyce, who's this. And he filled me in on it and told me about it. And he said, "I'd really like to meet with Sarah, the author, and you and me." And he had been asking about Ryan Bailey, who was the lead in the film I directed. And she ended up playing Persephone. And he said, "How is she to work with?" I said, "She's great." And so they auditioned her and immediately were sold. And then I went out to lunch with everybody thinking that if the author liked me, that I'd get to audition and maybe things would go somewhere. And at the end of the meeting, they said, "Okay, great. Should we get started?" I said, "Well, hold on." So it was a rare case of not having to audition at all in my case. And John likes to work that way when he can. He loves working with friends. He just likes making movies. He just likes cinema, and he just likes working with people that he knows he can trust to do the job, that have a similar, ethic and work ethic and moral and all of this. And it just kind of came together. So he called all his usual crew members. We auditioned the rest of the people. I was in meetings and callbacks for all of them. And it kind of got off the ground. And again, if I ramble too much, you shut me down and we'll move on to the next
Mm-mm.
question. But
Keep going.
we were looking at how to fund this. And again, it was kind of while the strikes were happening and all this stuff. It was just a weird time. And again, taking us all back to that year, COVID had really kind of just ended. It was the first year we were kind of back to normal. And it was really hard. It was easy to get meetings, but it was really hard to get anybody to say, "Yes, I want to fund this movie with these actors who are not celebrities in A-list." With at the time, I don't. Bridgerton had certainly. I want to say Bridgerton had come out, but I don't know if it was the phenomenon that it is right now. And
No, it was
now we've
early.
got Wuthering Heights, and we have a new Pride and Prejudice, and we have all of these things. And everybody was saying Regency is a huge gamble. It's a niche audience. You're never going to make your money back. You're never going to. And so in the end, what we did is we ran a Kickstarter campaign to earn just enough money to build a couple sets. We filmed those and then used that footage to get other investors. And so we didn't go to, well, we didn't fully go to our own bank accounts. That's a whole other, won't speak for anybody else, but,
You got to
but
do what you got to
you
do,
got to do
right?
what you got to do. But we didn't fully do that because we couldn't afford to. So,
Yeah.
but but that said, we really did self-finance. I mean, we found the investors, we did this and that. Um, and it's funny, without naming names, a lot of the people, the companies, the studios, whatever that we met with, once we finished, then and a trailer came out, all of a sudden the phone
Hmm.
started ringing again.
Yeah.
But it's, and I don't fault them for that. It was a risky thing, and none of us are
Yeah.
famous, and that's just how it goes, and that's what they look for nowadays. So it has been a labor of love from the very beginning. At every turn, we thought we would try one thing and it would fall through, and we'd try another, and we just ended up doing it all ourselves, really. And it's crazy that it's finally out.
And it's so good. It is so
Thank
good.
you.
And hey, maybe, that now that those people have seen the first one, you know, because I
It's
imagine,
I know where you're going with that, and I would love to think that that is the case every time.
yeah,
The unfortunate reality, and this has nothing to do with our project. This is just how the business
yeah.
um, is it was still a very independent production, and a lot of people that we met with during the distribution process were very interested. But then, because it's a series, they wanted full creative control moving forward. Um, and we ended up turning down a lot of people for that, which is hard to do when a lot of us are like kind of waiting to be paid the bulk of, you know what I mean? But John, bless his heart, has stuck to his guns and his integrity, and said no. The reason that this thing worked, and the reason it feels genuinely, I'm not naive. I know this is an independent production, but genuinely, it feels a lot bigger than it really has any right to.
It really does.
It feels like there's a lot more money behind it.
Mhm.
And we pulled that off, and it's because we were able to stick to the story. It's a very faithful adaptation of the book. And I'll tell you, every single person on that set, and there were not many of us, but every single one believed in this thing
Mhm.
to its core and to their core. And I think that shows. I really do.
I would agree completely. So for those that haven't read the book, what is this, give us the overarching, what is Seeking Persephone? And then like for those that kind of like this genre, what would you liken it to if we're thinking classics? And I have a couple in my mind.
I feel like I'm too close to it. I should pass the baton to
I'll
you,
do the
but
classics part.
okay, you do the classics part. Seeking Persephone, as Sarah, the author, her kind of go-to response for that, which I think is great, is it's a retelling of the classic myth of Hades and Persephone, retold as in a Jane Austen era Regency setting, um, is kind of the best way of putting it, and and that's exactly what it is. You're following these two characters. I play Adam Boyce, who's the Duke of an area, Kilder, who he has no real family. He's got one best friend. He's very prickly. And you discover there's reasons for that. He's really truly not just a mean guy. He's really not. But you would wonder that at the start, and rightfully so. But he finds out that his man of business, as it were, finds a kind of what sounds like a spinster young woman who has just had no prospects. Their family's in disarray and ruin. And he's, imagining this hideous woman who couldn't get married if her life depended on it. And this way, if he marries her, he can have an heir, and he doesn't have to lose all his holdings to his distant cousin who he can't stand. So that's very much a trope we've seen before, a version of that. But our story is really watching these two people who are in this circumstance that neither of them planned for and asked for, and have their own walls up for various reasons. And they kind of discover that they end up needing each other, and through that fall in love. And it's a slow burn. I love that. If that's not for everybody, I totally get it. I actually really like that side of our story. It feels real to me, and so you're watching them realize that maybe it's okay to slowly lower those walls and need each other. And you watch them fall in love in almost real time.
So I'm going to do the classic part, but I'm going to hit the
Please,
slow.
yes,
I'm going to hit
please.
the slow burn part first because there's a
Okay,
lot. I know my audience pretty well, and we
okay,
often joke about the slow burn.
okay.
And this is so well done. I mean, it's just the right amount at the right time. It just kind of keeps you going a little bit. So it's a good slow burn. I'll say
Thank you.
that.
I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
So I had watched it and I called a friend and I said, "Hey, on your weekend when you got some time, you need to watch this." And so she took my advice. And I had in my mind the two classics that I thought it was, but I didn't say anything. So she
Okay.
watches it and she calls me and she says, "This is like Pride and Prejudice meets Beauty and the Beast." And I went, "Done. That's exactly what I had in my mind." Now, there may be other things, but we both thought Beauty and the Beast, Pride and Prejudice. So,
Couldn't agree more. Spot on. And Beauty and the Beast is a very similar parallel to Hades and Persephone. It's kind of inspired by based on that as well. So yes, 1,000% yes.
yeah.
I agree.
So read the script for Adam. What's that like that first thing about him that you really just kind of latch onto that you're like, yeah, I want to play this?
You know, I read the book first. When I got cast, I read the book. The screenplay was going through endless drafts because the first thing we did, and that Sarah really did, was we transcribed it almost page for page from the book, and it ended up as like a 300-page script, which you just
Wow.
can't. So then we start figuring out, okay, with a novel, you're in the character's head depending on how it's written, and that's certainly the case with Adam. Um, so we had to come up with some ways of getting certain messages across without just on the nose dialogue exposition. And for us, that took the form of him ruminating a little bit with this painting of him and his father when he's a young boy, um, and being able to express some of those things that he can't say to anybody else and those frustrations. But uh, but I did have the good fortune of reading the book, which is a gift. I mean, to have all of that and to see inside the character's head. And then Sarah was on set with us every day, who wrote the story. So just an invaluable asset there. But um, it's tough because again, at first, Adam does feel almost mean, because he's so guarded. And before I start working on it, I read the whole thing. So I know by the end that he's not, and I can talk to Sarah and she can tell me what she was thinking when she wrote him, years ago for the novel. Um, but as far as that goes, I have a lot of sympathy for Adam actually, and maybe I'll lose some viewers with that, but I think you know, when you get burned enough, you learn to play with fire. And I think that that's really where he comes from. And I think we can all relate to that a little bit. I think a lot of people go through things and sometimes we don't share that with others and sometimes we do. And we have people we can lean on. Um, but this is just a fictional story, and a representation of this character dealing with those circumstances. And I think personally, if we allow ourselves, a lot of us have our own version of that. Doesn't mean we lock ourselves in the castle, much as some of us would like to. Um, but uh, but so I actually have a lot of sympathy for Adam, and it was fun to explore, and many days were kind of heartbreaking days when action is called and you try to just fall into those realities, those imaginary circumstances, um, and let it be as real as it can be for 90 seconds between action and cut, and uh, and hopefully that resonated in the end. Hopefully people could feel that.
I've watched those movies before where, the your lead, whether it's, whichever one it is, has that tough exterior and it goes too far. It's like they're just so mean that you
Hmm.
you just don't want to root for them.
I
You're just
agree. Yeah.
like, I just don't want to root for this person. This was different. This was like, we knew from the beginning, okay, we need to root for this character. Like, there's something there that we don't necessarily know. There's a reason Adam is the way that he is, which we find out as the
Yeah.
movie, progresses. So, how did you think? I mean, how are you like, okay, I'm here, and by the end, Adam needs to get to here. So were there conversations? How did those go with it's like, okay, I need to be, this tough or this mean right now. And then, just that breaking down of that wall that we'll say Persephone helped
Yeah,
along
she
the way
she
with.
does. She helped. She's the reason for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very personal thing for different actors. Me personally, I do my best to read the script a bajillion times if I have it with enough time to spare. A lot of times these days you don't. You get cast and you're on set a week later. But with this one, that wasn't the case, thankfully. So I read the script a lot. I read the book. I talked with Sarah. I talked with John. Um, and what I was going to say is I try to read it all and then on the day let it unfold and let it happen. And before we start, I just try to get in the mind of that character. Um, some actors will write notes all over their script and say, on this line, I want to raise an eyebrow, and on this one, I want to do this. I don't do any of that. I memorize it. The way I was taught is and again, this is not going to work for everybody, but I write out all my lines as one run-on sentence. And so I think it was like a 5-page sentence that I had by the end of it. Um, so there's no punctuation, there's no anything. It's just for me at least, it ingrains it in my brain to the point where I don't have to think about it
Mhm.
when we're doing it, and just the words come out, but I can be focused on what's in front of me. So as far as that goes, I didn't really plan anything beat per beat, moment per moment. But what I did do, because it is so important, is I would go through the actual script, not my lines that I had transcribed, and write down, okay, from this scene to this scene, he's incredibly guarded, and he has yet to even look at Persephone. And so no eye contact. Anytime I'm in a scene with her, I'm positioning myself so she's only seeing the left side of my face, which doesn't have the scar. Um, this scene to this scene, we're warming up a little bit. I think I called it like level 1 warming up, then level 2 warming up, then falling in love but denial about it, then falling in love and enjoying it, then sending her away. So I broke it up for emotional chapters,
Yeah.
but then in the moment I tried to just let it unfold. Um, and Sarah and I talked about at what point specifically does he finally look at Persephone, which is a big part in the book and the show. And it's when he's heading out to rescue Harry, if you know, you know. Um, and she basically says, I'm going to be worried about you until you get back. And he stops and he looks at her. And if you go back and watch this, the first time he makes eye contact with her, and after that, it doesn't matter what side of him she's on. So something unlocked with him in that moment. And I tried to map out those very important story beats and emotional overarching beats without overthinking the minute to minute, if that makes sense.
And you're not shooting in order.
No,
So if
which
you're
is
not
why I had
shooting
to
in
do that.
order,
Right,
you gotta have, yeah.
right. And in fact, for funding reasons, we ended up having a year off between 2 units of filming, um, which I'm thrilled you didn't know. Um, and and so I had to, when we came back, because I had done all this work ahead of time, mapping it out, and we'd shot a third of the movie, and I said, okay, I have to trust whatever I did before,
Yeah.
because I can't change it now. So so here we are. If you loved Adam, then it worked, and if you hated him, then don't cast me and stuff, I guess.
Okay, so you mentioned Harry.
Yeah.
So who are these other important people in Adam's life that have kind of made him who he is at the moment where this story picks up?
His father is passed on. His father is no longer in the picture, and had a very big impact on Adam, which we kind of see glimpses of, but he keeps a lot of that to himself. His mother is there, but he always felt that she was very dismissive of him, and pitied him, which he absolutely hates, which goes back to his scarring, and he was born without a right ear. And so early on, a, a series of surgeons, which they would have done back in the day, tried to dig it out. They thought it was under skin, and so he had these surgeries as a boy, and so you can imagine a childhood where all these incisions are coming starting from the ear and kind of spider webbing across part of his face. And early on, they would have been inflamed and pink, and he would have been incredibly self-conscious, and you can't miss it when you're a child. That's the worst. Braces are bad enough, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I think he kept that with him for a lot of his life, and his mother calls him, poor boy, and he hates it. He's determined to not need anybody. So she's a very important figure, despite him kind of just placating her and putting up with her, but there's not a loving bond there. Um, and I'll leave that. Maybe that grows a little bit, but they misunderstand each other quite a bit, I think. And then really the only person, there's the house, the housekeeper, Mrs. Smithson, and his butler, Barton, and a series of people who work at the castle. But for the most part, he really just has one friend, Harry Wendover, who is throughout this project. And if we get to do a second season based on book two, that becomes Harry and Athena's book, and Athena is Persephone's sister. So that becomes their story.
New
So
information for me. I didn't
there
know
you
that.
go. Something to look forward to
And I
if we
loved
can.
Harry. Like,
Harry's great. Yeah, and Toby did such a great job playing him. But Harry's really, he jokes towards the end of the movie as his conscience. He is kind of the Jiminy Cricket a little bit sometimes of Adam. But Adam keeps a lot of people very closed off, and Harry's kind of the only one who's
mm,
really in that circle. So those others orbit him, but Harry's the only one who's really let in, and he just roasts Harry all the time, and Harry knows he means nothing by it, and so they have
mhm.
this kind of unique friendship, and it works.
And then Persephone's dad is somebody that my audience is going to be sort of familiar with.
Yeah.
Who plays Persephone's dad?
Will Kemp, the wonderful Will Kemp. When I was a young lad, my very first movie, I was a glorified extra in Step Up to the Streets. I had one
I
line.
watched that one. I
The
saw
whole
the
scene was cut. I think I'm still an ex. Like I walked by in one scene, they gave me a big mohawk or faux hawk or something. But I was on that for like 3 days, and somehow got along well with a couple of the main actors. We were all kind of the same age, and I ended up going to one of their birthday parties, played laser tag, went bowling and stuff, and Will was there because he's in that film, and he was so kind and so I'd done nothing. I was in college still, and very kind. And then through happenstance, Will and I reconnected at a premiere, I think, years and years later in LA. And I said, "You're not going to remember me." And he goes, "No, I remember you. Yeah, yeah, yeah." And we reconnected and swapped numbers and have been friends since. And he came out for my directorial debut of my feature film. He was the male lead, and my kingdom for Will Kemp. He is such a gracious, talented human being. And I would work with him on everything if I could. So John and Sarah love him and said, "Do you think Will would be willing to play Persephone's father?" I said, "Let's text him right now. We'll find out."
yeah,
And because he is who he is, he said, "Yeah, of course,
sure.
of
And did a
course."
fantastic job.
He's so good. He's so great.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Yeah. Absolute
You
joy.
you mentioned, Ryan Bailey plays Persephone, and you
Mhm.
guys had worked together before. So how did already knowing her, already having worked with her, kind of shape that dynamic about how the two of you would kind of approach scenes together?
It's funny, when I'm on any project, whether I'm acting or directing, if I'm going to be working on a very close relationship with actors, so that's a different relationship. But whether I'm in the scenes with them or I'm directing them in scenes, I try to reach out to the leads and say, "Here's my info. If you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee, and before day one on set, when it all just moves, um, let me know. I'd love to." And so I did that with pretty much all the cast of the movie I directed, including Ryan. And she was great. I directed her. She did a wonderful job. And then John, the director of Seeking Persephone, was my post coordinator on Mythica Stormbound, which is the little fantasy movie I did with Ryan. And so he was editing it, and I was in his office, and we were editing this film together. And he said, "She's been on my radar for a minute. I think she'd be a great Persephone. How is she to work with? And I said, as a director, she's been great. She shows up prepared. She does the work. She's pleasant on set. Um, and I think that was kind of the tipping point. And they said, okay, let's bring her in to read for her. When I get on set for Seeking Persephone, it's a very different dynamic because now we're on equal footing and we're actors together and we're not being ourselves um and I didn't know we kind of had a laugh about it, but within the first day it was great and more than anything I hoped she only knew me as a director and I hoped that she was able to trust me to act. I said, I promise this is mostly what I do. Directing is every once in a while, but acting has paid the bills. But she was very giving and very trusting, and it was great.
You guys have great chemistry. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there was a real friendship there, which helps a ton, helps an
yeah.
absolute ton. Yeah,
Yeah. It did. I mean, it seemed very effortless, just the dynamic between the two characters. And
good. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, I mean, just very subtle. And in just, do you, when you're trying to like map that out now that you know, okay, we're both, here's where we are, this is what we're going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do. Like, I mean, how do you build that? I mean, I just always wonder what those conversations are like, or is it just, it's so many people will say it's even just a trust thing sometimes, where it's like we're both willing to take these risks and we trust each other. And a lot of times that's how the chemistry happens.
I think it's very much a trust thing, and if I'm directing actors, being an actor myself, there's a vulnerability there that has to exist on their part for the best possible performance, no matter whether it's a joyful performance or a tragic performance or an angry performance. There has to be a vulnerability to just let go and not be you, and that's a very tough thing. And the best actors out there are effortless with it. But so we'd had discussions where as a director, while we're doing a scene, maybe I'd pull her aside and we'd have a very we'd go to a corner of the set and have a very personal discussion of this is where her character in that was at this point, and I think maybe if we tune this side of the instrument a little bit more and this one a little bit less, then all of a sudden there's music, and so we'd had that relationship where she trusted me as a director to watch what she was doing, and I'm glad that she was able to then trust me as not me in a scene with her. Um, but I think looking back and hearing you say that, I'm sure that must have helped, because the actor director relationship is very intimate and vulnerable by its own nature.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to think that helped, but I'm very proud of her and I'm proud of myself and everybody who was on Seeking Persephone. So I think it worked, and John was great in just letting moments breathe, which is
Yeah.
also rare.
It's, I was trying to come up with like a phrase of like this thing that I kept feeling, but yet the story is moving forward. It's moving forward. It's got a good pace, but you're constantly playing, both of you, this like emotional restraint where it's like,
Mm.
this is where you want to get to, but yet both of them are just, there's just this restraint. Were there conversations about like, okay, we can't go there yet. Like, this is where we have to keep it. I mean, just the pacing of it, you said slow burn, but just the pacing of it was so well done.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't think so. I think there was enough discussion beforehand, and again, John, just the way John, the director, really likes to work when he can, and he'll joke about this, is he likes to hire the right actors and then just watch them perform. Um, and if a little bit of adjustment is needed, then he'll come in and it'll be exactly what we just said. We'll have kind of an intimate discussion, and everybody else will step out for a second and we'll say, okay, how are you feeling? And okay, got it. I think there's a little more room for X or Y or Z. But for the most part, he really likes to hire people he can trust in both the cast and crew, and then let them do what they do. Um, and it was a gift to be able to do that, to be honest. So I'm trying to think. One of my favorite scenes performance wise, is Persephone is in mourning, and Adam comes in the background from screen right, and basically says the horse trainer is ready for your lesson today, and she says, I just don't think I'm up for it, and he says, well, I can. Do you need anything? I can get you some medicine or some powder if you have a headache. Or she says, no, that's okay. And everybody was so respectful and so kind, our crew and everything. So I started in another room, and John would say action, and I'd walk in, and I'm largely in the background, out of focus for much of that scene, and it's ironically one of my favorite scenes. Um, but Adam is just trying so hard to find a nice gesture without letting his walls down completely. And what they ended up using the take, and I'm thrilled. But I had a couple false exits where I start to turn away and come back and try something else, um and on one of them, one or two of them, maybe it wasn't scripted because I don't think I even say anything, but I start to leave, and I turn, and then I leave again, um I don't know if I even needed to, but there's maybe a small chance where I said to John, "Hey John, will you just let the camera roll for a second? I just," and we've known each other long enough that John goes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so every once in a while there's a little thing like that, but for the most part we're really on the same wavelength, and that's the beauty of working with friends that you've worked with for so long, is they know you, and they know what you can bring to the table, and hopefully they like it, and they see it when you're in it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm replaying that moment. It was such a good scene.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah. Okay, so we know Adam is guarded.
Yeah.
Clearly, you talked
Yeah.
about, he's trying to do a good gesture, but he still wants to keep that wall up. So, would you say that there's a scene or a moment where he felt like, you know, okay, the now the walls need to come down? Or would you say this is more of just a little bit of a chipping away throughout the story?
I think it's largely chipping away. I think there's a couple big moments, and one of them is when Persephone says she's worried about his safety because he's never had somebody say that before.
Yeah.
Um, and it stops him in his tracks a little bit. And if you've seen it, you probably know the spot, but it's what we talked about, where it's the first time he really looks at her and makes eye contact. And I don't think that's an intentional thing from him in the moment. I think he all of a sudden he's taken out of that guarded fortress that he's built, and he's so flabbergasted that somebody would say that to him and seemingly really mean it. Um, and he says, "Well, don't worry about me." And before he leaves, he turns and promises her he'll be careful. So I think that's a very big moment for him,
Hmm.
and I think the real wake up moment for him is there's an event that happens, and he worries he might lose her completely, and I think at that point all the walls come down, and the guardedness after that is the fear of what he's now feeling rather than what he could feel. So I would say those are the two probably biggest moments story wise, I
Hmm.
think.
A little bit of chipping away, but at the same time, it's a pretty important moment, like you said,
Yeah.
where there's a little bit of fear that, or a lot of fear that rises up in him that kind of maybe just causes him to realize what he's really feeling.
Yeah. And what's at stake and what he could lose. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk. Like you mentioned the scar and all of that. Always
Hmm.
curious about, I mean, the hair, the makeup thing, the scars. You're having to get up and do this every day and play this out. It took me a while to actually even realize like the hair's down and I'm like, oh, that's to cover the
Hmm.
scar. You
That
talked a little
beautiful
bit about,
asymmetric hairstyle. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just thought I was having a bad hair day.
Just this mop of hair because and if you read the book, I mean it discusses how he really just it is a messy haircut, and he just covers as much of that as he can. He covers the lack of ear. And in makeup every morning I would we didn't have time, budget, resources, or the need really to fully get rid of the ear with a digital removing or a full face prosthetic. But what we did is we adhered the bottom half of my ear to my face and neck and covered that in in kind of a fleshy mound, to be frank. And then the scar would go on, and that was formed and designed by our makeup artist, Michaela Kester, very specifically for my face. And she and Sarah went back and forth a ton. Because again, it said in the book that Persephone finds it so odd that he would be so self-conscious, because you can't miss the scar, but it doesn't disfigure his face like he
No,
says it does.
no.
But that goes back to his childhood, and again, when you see them in the show, and you think, okay, these have been healed over 20 years. When they were brand new, they would have been inflamed and red and probably infected, and these things that just he wouldn't want anybody to look at him, and that's something that's just stuck with him. Um, so yeah, it wasn't a huge process every morning, because we didn't have to fully get rid of the ear. We would make sure the hair was long enough to cover it, and then the left side would do what it would do, and we sometimes we'd tuck it behind the ear just to show that contrast of he's really kind of living in shadow on half of his body as much as he can. Um, but yeah, it was just a thick mop of hair, and I don't know, probably half an hour in the makeup chair for the scar specifically, which isn't bad at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, so creatively, budget wise, we've talked about this. Like, what were some of the, okay, I'm going to say this and then if I have to cut it, we'll cut it. But
Okay.
there's wolves
Uh-huh.
in this story. Are these
Uh-huh.
real?
They are real wolves.
Can you
So
talk
so
about
they're
that?
they're real wolves on a green screen. So there was nothing there for the safety of the actors and the horses. There was nothing there on the day. But John, that was a huge thing. We had meeting after meeting about, do we try CGI wolves? Well, our budget will only let us do this type of CGI wolf. And it's funny not to call anybody out, because I've been amazed at the response. But there's been so much on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and people making edits every day saying how much they love this series and this movie. And but there was somebody who gave a review, and they were being very sweet, but they said, just it's independent, so things like the CGI wolves you just have to look past. And it's funny because they were real wolves.
They looked real to me, and I
They
thought,
weren't
boy, if those
CGI,
are
yeah.
fake,
So
somebody did a really good job.
no, they're real. They just aren't there on
Yeah,
the day. But
yeah,
we were agonizing over this, and John found multiple places within the US that had things like this, but it was just so expensive. And he found a place in Germany, in like a small town in Germany, and this is all they do. And they have all these different animals, and it's in a big studio with all green screens. Um, and they're trained to snarl, and they're trained to whatever. And he was petting the wolves between takes, and they're completely tame as much as you can. A wolf that's been ingrained for how many generations of evolution to not be tame, but as tame as a wolf can be, but trained to snarl and to nip and do things like this. So he went out there with the camera and the footage that we'd edited, and he was out there for like 2 days and went in and matched it up perfectly. And then I think we just did some digital leaves around their feet and stuff, um, just to blend that.
yeah,
But that was really it. Yeah.
yeah. Shot at a real castle?
We did, yeah. Raby Castle in England, and well, it was all northern England, but Raby Castle and Auckland Palace. It was a mix of the two. All the exteriors were Raby Castle, and a couple interiors were Auckland Palace, but much of it was at Raby.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. There's an aha moment. I'm not going to give anything away, but I want when everybody watches this. So I had an aha moment where, and let me think of how to not give this away.
Okay.
So
I'm curious now.
there's a bad
Oh,
guy.
okay. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, there's a bad guy,
Yeah.
and something happens, and like literally probably 4 seconds before this is revealed, I'm like,
Hmm.
I know.
Did you get it?
Oh, I got it. But it
You
was
got the
like,
who done it?
yeah, like three or
I
four
love it.
seconds before, and I was like, yeah. And this is probably at 2 o'clock in the morning because, like I said, I started watching this late, and then I couldn't stop watching it.
I'm
But
so sorry.
no, I thanks so much. I didn't have to go to work the next day.
Perfect.
But
Perfect.
it was pretty, it's cool. So everybody that's listening, watching this, there is a bad guy,
Yeah.
and the reveal is pretty cool to see. So it works out great.
Yeah, it was fun. It's a
Yeah.
good one.
Do you have a favorite moment? Something that's going to stick
I've
with you?
I've been asked this a couple times, and it's funny because I'm very blessed to have done this full time and have this pay the bills for, like I said, over a decade now. But this is definitely, I would say, my favorite thing I've ever done, and it felt the most special to me, and it's the most fun I've ever had. But at the same time, I wish I could have enjoyed it more while it was happening, looking
Yeah.
back. Um, as a producer and an actor and playing a character that so much is internal, I was terrified that, and I don't, this is not a fishing statement at all. This is hand of God, right? I was terrified that I was going to be the weakest link of this whole thing and just ruin this show. Like I really truly was. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself. Um, and I'm wearing a producer hat the whole time. And I look back and it's a lot of it is a blur.
Hmm.
The overall experience was an incredible one, and I'm so proud of everybody who worked on this. But the minute to minute, the day to day, kind of all blurs together. And so I wish I knew going in, and I was warned from loved ones and stuff. Don't be don't do that to yourself. Enjoy it, and I knew that that was going to be an uphill battle, and I failed in the end. But that's not to say I didn't have a good time. Please, please don't misconstrue that. But it's all kind of a blur.
Yeah.
So there are a couple moments like that one I mentioned where in the final cut I go, that was a nice moment. That worked out nicely. Um, Me personally, just as a person, I love riding. I love horse riding.
Yeah.
And so the days on horseback were very, very fun for me. And I was on a wonderful horse named Mark, and we became very fast friends. Very fast friends, which sounds so silly, but really truly, and he was very responsive and very kind and trusted me as somebody who hadn't ridden him before. And so I there are a couple moments on screen there that I'm like, well done, Mark. Thanks for trusting me.
Yeah.
And those are always fun. I love riding, so I do remember those days, and
And they're
we had
beautiful moments too.
they really are. Yeah,
Beautiful moments.
they really are. He was a dressage horse, and so we'd canter, and he would raise his hands or his hooves up. Um, and I would ask his trainer, I said, "Am I doing something wrong? Is there a different command I should be giving him, a different gesture, a different feel, to get a little more speed or a little?" And he goes, "No, he's doing that because he's having fun." And I said,
Yeah.
"Well, I'm not gonna stop that then. That's just
Yeah.
it's just because he's having a good time and he's prancing a little bit, and you see that in the show, and so those are fun days for sure."
Yeah. I also think one of my favorite moments was when he gave a gift. So that was
Oh,
fun.
yeah, it's a nice moment.
Yeah. It
That
was a
is a
good
nice
moment.
moment.
Yeah.
It's an awkward schoolboy moment for the Duke of
So
Kildare. Yeah,
you guys have been fantastic about, just really staying on social media, getting the word out and all of that.
I'm trying.
Have you seen any messages or anything that either just, really surprised you or made it feel like it was all worth the effort?
Yes, is the short answer there. I try very, very hard, especially as a producer on this, but I try anyway to, because I wouldn't have a job if people didn't watch. You know what I mean? With any
Yeah.
of the things that I do, and I try to let people know that I'm aware of that and so grateful for it because I really am. Um, and since it's come out, there's been a lot of people who are very upset that they can't watch it yet because it's not available outside the US and the UK. It
Right.
is coming to more places. They think that we're in charge of that. We're not in charge of that because it would be everywhere if we were.
Yeah.
We want people to see it, and we have to get our investors paid back if we want a shot at doing the next one. So I feel bad about that. But then the other half has been people that have really like in an amazing way latched onto this, and they say, people are saying, "Oh, it's the best $20 I've ever spent. I've watched it 6 times already," and the rewatchability from a lot of people,
For sure.
saying
I
it's
can agree.
well, that's kind of you to say thank you, but yeah, saying it's become one of their favorite things they've ever watched, and for an independent production that has just shed blood, sweat, and tears for 3 years to get this off the ground, um, it's that's coupled with a crippling imposter syndrome that I struggle with every day. And so it does. I've gotten a lot of really wonderful messages and people that say, I needed this right now, and this moment of, here's somebody with this self-image that he can't get past, and this woman who makes him feel seen, and it reminded me to hang in there on this or that, um or I've been feeling really down or really stressed, and this just the world melted away for 3 hours while I watched this. And so there's been a ton of messages like that, and I'm not able to respond to them. I get to as many as I can, and comments especially, I try to get to because it's easier to find them again. Um, but I'm honestly blown away by the response. I really am, and so it's this weird internal battle that I deal with that's nobody else's burden to bear but my own. Where I have this imposter syndrome, and I spent 2 years wondering if I was going to ruin this thing, and then people are reaching out to me saying how much it's affected them. And that's a weird thing to reconcile when you're that guy. So I'm very grateful for it. I struggle with it a little bit. It's a lot for me sometimes, but I'm very grateful, and I'm so thrilled um, that it's affecting people like that. I remember being in acting class, and my teacher was saying, I don't think this was his quotes. He had read it or somebody had said it to him. Um, and this is still something that's hard for me to reconcile with, but somebody had said, who was an actor or director, I may not, I may not be, but I'm not curing cancer, but hopefully I'm giving the person who is a little bit of a break. And I forget how powerful that can be, especially when I'm not in
Mhm.
Marvel stuff or big, you know what I mean? For the little engine that could to get to this point and be received so well by audience members who had no stake in the game, is a wonderful thing. And it could end tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe it grows. Maybe it gathers a following. People like you talking about it is huge. It makes all the difference. So thank you again. Um, but I'm getting used to it, I guess, a little. I'm trying to get used to it, and yeah, it's tough for me, but I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with the response.
So, what are the chances that there may be another one?
From the beginning, that's all that we have wanted is I mean, if we had it our way, and we could write the future, we would adapt the entire series of books. John's talked to me about directing a couple down the line. Like, we would love, and me personally, I've joked, I'm like, man, if this could be my retirement, like if I could do a Lancaster series or movie once a year for the next 10 years, because I think there's seven books. Oh, Sarah's gonna yell at me now. And then there's a John Quill series, and they overlap. So between the two, there's over 10. But if we could do this, I would be honored to play this character and then help produce and direct. Um, that would be amazing. And so that's for sure the dream. Don't get me wrong. The realistic chances, it really depends on how well this one does. It's on Amazon Prime right now, but again, people have to buy it, and some are turned off by that, and I totally get it. But what people don't realize, I think, is Amazon, for example, they take a huge slice of that before anything, and then our distributors get their slice of what's left, and
Mhm.
then the investors get their slice of what's left of that, and there's a trickle down, and it's a very normal business model. We're not getting hoodwinked. This is how these things are done. But when all is said and done, we're getting pennies on the dollar or dollars on the $20. Um, and so it will require a lot of people going, you know what, this is worth supporting these guys, and I'm going to buy it, and I love it, and I want to see it continue. And the more of that we can get, the faster we can get our investors paid back, and the faster we get them paid back, the sooner we can start raising money for a second season. And so we'll see. It really, it's anybody's guess right now. If things continue, I'm hopeful. It's been a very warm response, and incredible, especially for an independent production that does not have a marketing budget, and
Mhm.
we don't have billboards. We're not on talk shows. We're not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Big movies, 30% of their budget is marketing after it's made. We just don't have that, and so it's very much a grassroots kind of movement, and it's gone as well as I could have ever hoped. And if that continues, I think our chances are good.
Yeah.
But I'm scared, knock on wood. I'm scared to say that just yet.
I think you talked about, we don't want to talk about COVID anymore, but I think it
Sure.
not only caused the industry to shift, but I think it caused the audience to shift their perspective on what to go watch, how to watch it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think we're so much more open now to we just want to find something that's quality. We don't care who put it together, where it's out. We just want to find something that's quality. And in my mind with this one, like you talked about the rewatchability, people are going to rewatch it. They buy it, they're going to rewatch it. So, and I also, when I was sitting there processing, okay, it's $20, I thought, I'm going to spend so much more than that if I go to a
yeah,
movie theater and if
yeah.
I buy the popcorn and do all of that. And I'm like, and buy the movie, everybody. Just buy the
Well,
movie.
thank you, thank you. And it's just I get it though. I understand the hesitation, and there's a lot of people who have said on social media and commented on my own posts. As the guy who helped make it, they're not afraid to tell me what they're thinking, and have said, I'm not giving Amazon $20 when I already pay for Prime.
Mm,
And it's like I get that, but this is not an Amazon
no,
production.
no, it's not.
They're hosting it at the expense of a huge slice of it.
Mhm.
Um, so I think if more people knew that, I don't know that everybody would, and no project is going to be for everyone. I don't, I'm not insulted if people don't like it and it's not their cup of tea. I totally get it, but I think more people would like it than they realize. If they give it a chance, I do feel that. I think it is a special project to me at least, and that seems to be landing. And I think too that with AI right now, especially in every facet of our lives, not to go down that rabbit hole because that's a whole other conversation. But I think art in general, whether it's pottery or woodworking or movies and TV shows or books or songs, I I personally think we're in an age where we're finding we have to question the fabric of reality for the first time in the history of our species. um, Knowing that you're supporting humans
Yeah,
who are in it for the love of the game, I think is something that a lot of people I've started gravitating towards
absolutely.
when I make purchases.
Mhm.
And I think there's something to be said for that. And I hope that that works in our favor on a timeline that lets us keep going.
Mhm. So, following your social media, what's next? Because we've seen some hints of where you might have been recently. Can you share anything?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can share a little bit. Yeah. During Seeking Persephone, actually, I took let's see, is this going to give too much away? Now we're getting close enough. I'm a producer on this one. I can say this. Um, and I am trying to produce more so that it's nice for things like this where I can say, no, I'll make a judgment call.
Yeah.
I just got back from Northern Ireland. Back in 2023, we were about to get Seeking Persephone, or maybe we had just launched the Kickstarter, but we were about to start trying to really, in earnest, get this thing off the ground. So three years ago now, coming up on. And I took a horseback trip across the coast of Northern Ireland. I rode across the coast over a week. Not start to finish. It wasn't a backpacking trip. I'd go to a bed and breakfast every night, but I'd be at these different spots along the northern coast, and it was the best thing for my soul at the time. Um, and and I made friends with the company that ran these tours, and they joked by the end. They said, if you ride really well, if you ever want to be a guide and move to Ireland, I said, do not threaten me with a good. I said, right now my industry is a big question mark. I said, you can't,
Don't tempt me.
don't tempt me. And I said, well, just saying. So I came back and I told John and Sarah that, and I said, I'm telling you, it was so beautiful, and it is ripe for a story of this nature. And I pitched a
Yeah.
loose thing, and I told them how so kind of on the side, they said, well, if, maybe after Seeking Persephone, we can do something out there. That would be beautiful. That would be great. And we pitched a couple things to a couple different people, and it sat with some companies for a while and versions of a script. And and it ended up coming back to us, and we found an investor that we've worked with who said, "Sounds great." So I was over there location scouting where it's finally happening. It was kind of a side, oh, maybe when the dust settles on all this other stuff, we can do this. Um, but we're figuring out dates right now, and we're trying to go to Ireland shortly-ish.
Yeah.
For this script that Sarah has written that's not based on one of her books, but is loosely inspired, not loosely, is, I guess loosely inspired by stories I came back with and ideas that I had. And then she took that, and the three of us have kind of shaped this into something. And so we went and we found these beautiful locations, and I got to visit with this horse company again and visit the farm and saw the horse that I rode while I was out there. And that's moving forward right now. You never want to say it's a for sure thing until it comes out, but
Yeah. But
that's
be
what we're working
watching
on right now.
everybody.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
What a
yeah.
cool collaboration that you guys have got going on. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the three of us work really well together, and it's been really, really fun.
Okay,
Yeah,
so everybody is going to go watch Seeking Persephone.
please.
When they get finished watching Seeking Persephone, what's a project that you're really proud of that people should check out?
Gosh, I don't know. For me, the fun is making it, so I don't watch half the stuff that I'm in. And there have been a number of projects that people go, "Oh, I just saw you in this or that." Oh yeah, I remember that. So I don't know.
We tell them to watch Step Up 2 and watch your little in the
Oh,
background.
you blink, you'll miss it. That's way back in the day. Oh, over the summer last year, the three of us again. Actually, Sarah didn't write this one. John and I worked on this little rom-com called Sleeping Beauty Next Door that I have yet to watch, but that's also been received
I
really
bought
well.
it. I
Did you
bought it.
really?
I haven't watched it yet, but after I finished that one, I was like, all right, I'm going to buy it. Did I buy it or I rented it? I have 30 days to watch it. So
That that was
it's
that
on
was
me.
another one that John called me up and he was like, "Here's the script. You want to do this? It's basically just going to be summer camp. We're going to try to get it done in 2.5 weeks. It's going to go." I forfeited all my pay for it. I was like, "Let me produce it with you. If it makes money, give me a
Yeah.
little piece of it." Which is rare to get as an actor. And he's so honest and so good about it. He's kind of the only person I'll ever say that to.
Yeah.
So feel free to go watch that because if it
There we
makes money,
go.
I'll make money.
There we go.
But honestly, I don't know. I had a lot of fun doing a CW show called The Outpost, which is a medieval fantasy show. More than half of what I've done is me talking with an English dialect and talking like this and riding horses and wielding a sword and all the rest of it. Which is very much what Seeking Persephone is. If you've listened to this whole interview and you're like, please don't tell me there's an American interregency thing. I promise I don't talk like this in it. But that's kind of a fun one if
Yeah.
it's sword and sorcery kind of thing. But I don't know.
Okay.
I just
That's
like
good.
I'm grateful to do what I do, and if something I was in resonates, I'm thrilled.
Absolutely. Well, Jake, it has been a blast talking with you and giving us some insight into Seeking Persephone. And thanks so much for your time. And I really do encourage everybody to go watch it. And like you said, you may be the person who doesn't like it. I don't know why you wouldn't, but it's been a blast talking to you. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and for watching it and supporting us.
You
I
bet.
can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.